Thank you for that control. That there, what you're seeing there is footage from earlier today. Today is June 24th, and we're a couple days from the 46th memorial, 46th anniversary from what is known as the Jumping Bull Shootout. Some of you might want to check into Incident at Oglala. That is a Robert Redford film. There's another film out there called Warrior that raises awareness about the events of that day. There's also a Leonard Peltier podcast, and we have the very good fortune of being on the ground in Washington, D.C., to meet up with the Freedom Riders who have ridden on horseback all the way from Macy, Nebraska, all the way to Washington, D.C., and they're getting into engagements with local law enforcement, local other personnel that are confused as to why there's a sudden influx of Indians on horses in Washington, D.C., calling for the freedom of Leonard Peltier. Tonight, we have an awesome show for you. It's really my honor. We have the first in studio, or well, as you can see, this is our studio today. It is part of a suite that we've converted to cut to the chase on the road. And we happen to have a brother with us tonight. His name is Reverend Lennox Yearwood, and he'll be the first in-studio guest and just a brother of mine who I've known for some years now, but he'll be the first that will be able to kind of speak with, and catch up with him. I haven't seen him in a couple years. And then we're going to get an update from Muffie and Felipa about Line 3. As many of you know, Line 3 is in Anishinaabe and Dakota and probably other indigenous nations territory. It's a pipeline owned by Enbridge. And right now there are mass arrests happening. It's just like Standing Rock. There, we try to keep the attention on that. And Muffie and Felipa, and also Muffie Musso and Felipa De Leon, we just called them Muffie and Felipa, and somehow it made it into the rundown like that. But it's amazing because they're going to be able to give us a brief update about Line 3 and about what they went through today, what they were able to participate in a pride parade on the Pine Ridge Reservation. So third, I want to give you a rundown of what it was like today on the ground on the Washington Mall by the United States Capitol building, and being able to engage with Gene Roach, who of course was at the Jumping Bull property compound that fateful day. So we'll catch you up with that later on after Reverend Yearwood and after a discussion about Line 3 with Muffie and Felipa. And then finally, I want to talk about, I know, we're all feeling very heavy from the discovery of young children in mass graves at residential schools, at boarding schools. And we are encouraged to hear that United States Department of Interior Secretary, Madam Secretary Deb Haaland, has committed to creating a federal Indian boarding school initiative. We'll get to more of that. But for right now, I'm really just excited and honored that Rev was able to join us and come chop it up with us at the hotel, because he's a busy man. He's the president of the Hip Hop Caucus. Like I said, I can't remember when I first met Rev, but he invited us to his studio right away in the offices of the Hip Hop Caucus. And so if you could take a couple minutes or whatever, just to kind of introduce yourself to our audience, brother, that would be mad appreciated.
Well, I just want to say it's an honor to be here with you. I mean, it's good to see you. This was my excuse to come here and see you. So if it means being in the studio, on TV, and on the show, then so be it. I'm Rev Yearwood, president of the Hip Hop Caucus, and I simply put fight for liberation for our people. That is what we do, and Hip Hop Caucus is an amazing organization that uses one's cultural expression to shape one's political experience. And so we obviously use the culture of hip hop to create change within our communities, and it's grown. So, but again, just glad to be with you in this 2021.
Well, we made it through a pandemic,
We
bro.
made it through.
So we can definitely be thankful for that. And I am not super familiar with, the origins of Hip Hop Caucus. I do know, however, from seeing a trailer, it's a on a movie or a documentary coming out called uh, Knowledge of Self, the fifth element of hip hop, and
Okay.
it explores the origins of hip hop and how
Yeah.
there are indigenous roots in, of course, the drum, the voice,
Most definitely.
that expression.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so, there hip hop is universal language. Music is universal language. But what could you talk to us about some of your climate justice work? The things that you've been able to do. That's kind of how I begin to hear of you. And then it was just afterwards that I was able to meet you. So I was hype about that.
No,
We all support each other. You know what I mean?
Most definitely. Well, it goes both ways. I
Mhm.
mean, definitely the work you do and you've done, and clearly around climate, but obviously around Standing Rock and before, just in general, fighting for our people. And there's a connection there for Black and Indigenous and people of color to continue to fight for, our not just our, our survival. I'll say it like that. So I'll say the Hip Hop Caucus. I've been doing this work now for a while, and the skill you mentioned the history. I'm very honored that Hip Hop Caucus has grown. We deal with the politics of hip hop, and that's kind of where I want to start. When hip hop was created, um, it was created literally because people wanted to tell their story. And it is, as Chuck D would say, it was the CNN for the hood, and the Bronx was building a highway through the community that would cut off the community, that would put people redlining, that would do many things. It was in that creation, which is part interpretation justice and environmental justice, that actually creates hip hop. So people really don't understand that actually hip hop's roots go back to this environmental justice to the beginning.
Yeah.
From when it was created. So we bring that forward because we demand that our community have clean air and clean water. We demand that these pipelines, my hat here says stop
Hell
line
yeah.
3. We demand that these line 3 and line 5 and the Mountain Valley pipeline and the Peltier pipeline in Memphis through the Black community, we demand that our people are not the path of least resistance. So that's why we stand up, because we understand that this thing of extraction didn't just begin with the industrial age. It begins with how our indigenous sisters and brothers were treated. It begins with those who were enslaved people to this country. So that mentality of looking upon humanity, we're just here to say no more. And our next generation is now at a point here where they now realize that our parents. And it was so good to see that earlier footage with Leonard, Peltier, and others from the 20th century, and those fights that still continue. But we now realize that those who fought for equality in the 20th century, that we're now fighting for existence in the 21st century. And so this is no game, and we're here to make sure that we can transition from fossil fuels to clean energy.
What you've been in DC through the entire Trump administration, bro.
Yeah, and Obama to be. I mean,
That's right. That's
come
right.
on now. Everybody can say everybody wasn't perfect, especially Trump.
So I don't know. There's so much to talk about, bro. I just I mentioned Trump specifically because they created the 1776 commission. Inside that administration, which is basically a think tank put into practice to try to continue colonial lies and continue to not tell the truth about how some of our founding fathers were slave owning, genocidal
That's right.
maniacs. And so I would just, what was it like out here? Was the struggle change? Or don't matter what teams in control of the administration there? What was it like on the ground when George Floyd, you know, rest in everlasting power, when that happened, this country was on fire.
Yeah.
And now we see, a Biden administration that is only there because the black vote put him there.
That's right.
And now they're coming around with Juneteenth, declaring it a federal holiday. You see Deb Haaland, it's almost like everything that we try to cover up is coming out to the forefront in this country. And so, I mean, how has that impacted your work here in DC, and what's your experience with that?
Well, let me start with the Juneteenth piece first, and I'll get to Trump in a second. Juneteenth is something that, while many are happy that there's a holiday, it's hard, and I'm sure you can understand this. It's something there, as someone as from African descent, it's very difficult because yes, we have a holiday, but I'll give it this example. It feels like if someone has their partner and their partner has been abusive to them, their partner has beat them, their partner has raped them, their partner has done this awful things to them, and then on their birthday gave them flowers. You kind of feel like well, how should I feel about that? You've done all these things. You really haven't given me anything else, and so I don't know if I can really trust you. You know what I mean? Just this one day, and then you're gonna go back to beating on me and doing all the bad things to me. And so I think that's what many people are processing that. You know what I mean? And so I think that, as you mentioned Trump, I think that people, it was clear that that administration was there to push back on everything that was gained, and it was there to create something where it was unfortunate because there is a movement of all of us who are black, white, brown, red, male, female, straight, gay, theist, atheist, humans who are saying, man, it's time for us to come together. And that's beautiful. And there's a side of this who doesn't want it to happen. And so, on one hand, I was, speaking of DC, I was arrested when Bush was in power, quite a lot. Matter of fact, there's a lot of video out there when I was with Bush. I was protesting the war in Iraq, and I was beaten pretty savagely.
Whoa.
And the other thing there was, but I was also arrested during Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
So people are saying, don't for Keystone XL, and for many other things. And so I was a bipartisan arrestee for Democrat and Republican, but Trump was different. Trump was something where it wasn't no longer we were just laying out there. It felt like we were fighting for survival, all of us, and that he was basically this person who was willing to take down the ship, and still is, with all of us in it. So, the stakes are very high. They're still very high. Democracy is on the line. I mean, right now, I have to tell you, democracy is on the line. We're not getting legislation. I mean, obviously, people they need to get rid of filibuster, other things like that. But this is a critical moment in time for all of us.
I feel that, brother. I do. I feel like Trump kind of shook our version of how political, economic, social justice reality was supposed to happen. He broke all the rules, made us all nahinchia, made us all looking over our shoulder. Him goading police officers, go ahead and shoot that person who you've criminalized, who you've labeled a super predator. Get him out of here. Somebody's getting uppity in my rally. Get him out of here. Beat him. And back in my day, they would have beat him down. Remember when he was saying these crazy things?
That was what he was. I mean, and that's the thing about that. He was. It's clear that not only was he saying that, but people believed that.
He exposed the underbelly of the colonial and racist underbelly of our country.
Most definitely.
And now we know them cats ain't playing. They're organized. They're well capitalized. They're also armed. Some of them. I mean, what we saw January 6th, I was expecting something much more organized based on their rhetoric, the way that the racist radical fringe speaks in this country. But what I saw was nowhere near what I was expecting. It was like, guys on the couch came out for a weekend of drunken trumping, but that's not to diminish the blood that was spilled in the U.S. Capitol, right?
Not at all. And I think there was some who was organized. I think there was some who joined with them. It's kind of like, how there's some who are serious, and you go out to play some basketball and football, and then some of your drunk friends show up.
That's like, exactly what it was.
And they messed the whole game up. It's like, man, we didn't really need you to be here. But if it wasn't for them, man, we would have been in a bad spot. So I think, we're in a position now. Let me say this. We're in a position now where we have to be very serious. Mm-hmm. We're not only just fighting for us, but we're fighting for the next generation. And I think that this is a critical moment for us.
Speaking of that, the FBI, the CIA, I'm sure NSA, all the alphabets and the agencies that are responsible, which prior to Trump, you could say that is mostly career European American cats that had access to the highest levels of intelligence, and they got to say who was a threat to national security. Mm-hmm. They got to say what national security was. They got to call the people at Standing Rock religiously driven indigenous jihadists. Mm-hmm. They got to label. They got the power of labeling. But now we're not in that same boat, and I think Biden understands that. Even though Biden comes from that kind of demographic, but his team, he's obviously paying attention, and his team looks like us. They look like a cross section of white, black, red, whatever, any kind of color, and fully cognizant of the changing binary rules that we were raised with, that I wasn't even aware that I was raised like that. And I mentioned the FBI because I want to talk about, this. I watched this flick, Judas and the Black Messiah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Fred Hampton.
Chairman Fred, bro. I mean, yeah. I remember, I think, meeting Junior.
My dear brother.
Yeah, that's in all these cross-sectional struggles. Nobody knows about what COINTELPRO did.
Yeah. It still does.
I mean, that's right.
Yeah, no, it still does. I mean, for me, well, folks who know my story, I was in the Air Force. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
brother.
I was an officer in the Air Force, and I started to speak out against the war in Iraq, which is not a good career move, actually. I will tell you, in the military, that's speaking against the war. Folks take that stuff kind of personally, but I did that, and they decided to threaten me with conduct unbecoming an officer and a threat a threat to national security. So I actually went through that, and that's actually one reason I got into the movement so heavy. I thought I was going to go to prison.
Yep.
And I was like, well, since I'm going to go to prison, I might as well go out here and just raise some hell anyways. I mean, might as well. This is, I might as well get it in. And thank goodness, shout out to ACLU and other and Lawyers Guild and a lot of great lawyers on our side who was there to make sure not only did we won the case, but got me honorable discharge. But one of the things in that was this. I saw how long that carried over. I saw that even when it was over, how many lists I was still on. Even when I would I went to the White House, then President Obama was giving me an award for around climate things. And when I went to the White House, they had somebody walk me around, give me a pink badge. You go to the White House, you get a green badge. They give me a pink badge. So I was like there going to get an award, but I had somebody follow me around. So this is a good reminder that I wasn't going to be around that long. In that day, I was going to get my award and keep moving. But I think that this is the thing that we need to understand, that COINTELPRO and those things are not in the past. Those things are very much, and I think I say this to the young activists. A lot of young activists out here need to be very careful. That's why we had to have trainings for them, because a lot of them, particularly this past year during the Move for Black Lives or Stop Line 3 or other fights we were doing, they'll get out there. And this thing is fun. And they don't know that there are a lot of folks who are watching.
I did not know about security culture before Standing Rock. I was running for the United States Congress when Standing Rock went on. So like
I remember
was,
that, actually.
yeah, that's right. You introduced me. You gave me the best introduction I've ever had, bro. I felt like I was coming out of the underdog corner. You know,
listen.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's very real, and you know they play this divide and conquer tactic. COINTELPRO, the those who are silently and probably financially backing the racist radical fringe in this country.
Yeah.
The Steve Bannon type cats. That, you know, it is what it is, and this is the gravity of the decisions that people have to make when we're facing this type of career move or this type of work. We're willing to put ourselves out there and say, hey, you're not, you know, I don't care if it's Kelsey Warren or if it's Enbridge or who it is, you're not going to build this pipeline through my treaty territory unless you take me out first. And then they line up their side, and they ended up charging me with inciting a riot. It was trumped up, so to speak. This was before Trump was the president, but we're dealing with very real circumstances. And on the Pine Ridge, the FBI has admitted to 69 murders. They call them resmers, uninvestigated. Nobody's been held accountable. And our government was giving arms, ammunition, funding, and political and legal, most importantly, legal cover, impunity to our own people to commit these atrocities against their own folks. And you know, my family came from the other side, from the traditional side of things, or from the side that was victimized by COINTELPRO. I never blame those that it happened to at the time, and the decisions that some people might have made.
Yeah.
But those impacts are long lasting. There are Black liberation folks who stood for that in the time of Chairman Fred, in the time of Fred Hampton, who are still there.
Definitely.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts about, you know, it's catching on mainstream. We're out here in DC calling for clemency for Leonard Peltier. This president and those around him are recognizing Juneteenth. At the same time, there's a mainstream kind of a woke movement where people are recognizing, hey, we've done some messed up things in this country, and we need to think about how is it that we are trying to label water protectors as terrorists? We're trying to label people who stand up against capitalism as terrorists. We're going down this path here, and I just, you know, I wanted to get your thoughts on Leonard Peltier and political imprisonment, bro.
You said a lot there. Well, let me start with the political prisoners. First of all, you start with Pine Ridge. Hip Hop Caucus loves Pine Ridge, and we will always stay with Pine Ridge. And I hope that everyone there is doing well. I know we visited there a couple of times with artists, and we just continue to send love to those, particularly young people out there in Pine Ridge. As far as political prisoners, I think, you know, that's a layer, because one, the obvious layer to that is that there are those who need to be still released, like Leonard, like many of those who are from who are part of the Black Power movements, many of those who laid it all on the line and are still in prisons. And many folks are benefiting from that, which is the other part I'm going to get to. So this is the thing I think we need to talk about, is that there are folks who are laid it on the line, and many of us are benefiting. Our organizations, our institutions are benefiting from their struggle. And so I think that we have to really make sure that we relook at those who gave their lives, their livelihoods, their families, I mean, everything up, so that we as a movement can progress. I think that our movement right now has to get out of, I mean, let me be very, very clear. I think that our movement has some problems that we need to address. I think that we have a nonprofit industrial complex problem. I think we have a problem where we have a movement that is very siloed. I think that our movement has a tendency to be, and not even to be siloed, but a siloed, segregated progressive movement, in which, when there are folks, like you just said earlier, who are out there for Leonard Peltier, and there'd be one group who are mobilized, and then there'd be those for the anti-war, be a whole other group, and it'd be a group that will come for George Floyd, or Movement for Black Lives, be a whole other group, be those fighting for gay rights, be a whole other group.
Right.
And we're all fighting the same entity. but we'll all get different permits to march. So I think we got to figure that one out and break down those silos. And I think that then we'll be stronger together. There's unity in the community.
Mhm.
And so I think that we have to break down those silos. And I think that's something, but there's a reason for that. A lot of these folks who are literally benefiting within the foundation sector, sometimes they're benefiting from capitalism in a
Mhm.
way. And so they don't want things to be too different. They want to be kind of different. But if we're talking about a new world, a new way of thinking, that means those who are behind the prisons, and this is my face side, the gates will come down, brother. The gates will come down, and they will be set free because and they will be honored and loved because they gave all their lives for freedom. And that's all you can ask for any freedom fighter or any peacemaker or
Mhm.
anyone for justice. They gave their lives, and we on the other side of the gates should be banging on the gates until they come home.
You're absolutely right. That's it's hard to hear that we're in a place where we're literally standing on their shoulders. We're
Yes.
standing on their sacrifice. Some of them, like Leonard Peltier, are still in prison. Mumia Abu Jamal,
Yes.
still in prison. Asada Shakur, still in exile. She
Yes.
can't even come home to her peoples.
No.
And so we want to continue to build those bridges. And you're right about it's the same group of people that are keeping us fighting over these classifications
Yes.
that have been assigned to us.
And that has to change. Because it's just the thing. There are real consequences. People are dying. Talking about climate earlier, this year, not only with the pandemic, it's a whole other issue in itself, particularly for Black and Indigenous and Brown communities who are dying at alarming numbers. But even from climate, this year in Texas, we had children in this country freezing to death. Babies. Can you imagine how horrible a death that is for a child to freeze to death? I mean, literally, this week with Claudette, there were children who died in Alabama. But there's so many things. We have heat waves. We have grandmothers now who got through the pandemic and are literally cooking to death in condos and apartments in Chicago. Something is wrong. And I think that we have to just really I think at some point in time, and this is why I said, listen, I'm happy. And I will say this to anybody, elections have consequences. I'm happy that Biden is in office and all that good stuff. Much happier than, obviously, who was there before.
Yes,
but I
sir.
will say this, to be very clear. My job is not to be working for Democrats or Republicans. My job is to work for the people. And my job is simple. Ain't nobody free till we all free. In the words of Fannie Lou Hamer. And so that's where I stand. And so that means that I have to put my life on the line, my livelihood. If I have to be put in prison, I just hope that if I'm in prison, that nobody forgets me.
Yes. Well, again, if you're just tuning in, this is Reverend Yearwood, Lennox Yearwood. Brother, I did not know that was your given name. I just know you as the Rev.
Yeah.
Reverend Yearwood. He's on Twitter at Rev Yearwood, hiphopcaucus.org. And he has been able to lay the foundation for why, no matter what our causes are, we should be uniting. And that goes for the way that we have desanctified. We have sterilized and stolen sacred understandings from billions of human beings who don't know that Mother Earth is sacred, that Mother Earth is alive, that water is its own spirit, that the air we breathe is grandfather's breath in our metaphysics.
That's right.
And so and some people get nervous with the word God, but we are doing that work for the powers of creation.
Most definitely.
Expressing ourselves and trying to do what we can while we're here, because I can feel the urgency in your voice.
Oh, yes.
In knowing that we're on the other side of our journeys here, and we've got to do what we can to stand. So I wanted to give you just, a few minutes to make some closing comments, anything you might have left out. But brother, I don't even know what the time is, but I told you 30 minutes. You
Yeah,
got other things, you know what I
listen,
mean?
I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I think this is we have to use media. A lot of folks said Revolution may not be televised, but it will be uploaded. We will put that thing on Facebook, Instagram. So we right here with you, we got to make sure to upload that thing. Let me just say this to people in this moment. What's real important. I know a lot of us, as you mentioned, we get real attached to our earthly this existence in that process. And I'm so glad that we're recording this. And I hope that 100 years from now, in 2121, that generation has clean air and clean water. If they have allowed for all the rich people to escape to Mars and they are here suffering, that means we have failed. So I just talk to I want to say to all my freedom fighters out there who are listening, listen, keep fighting, fight to the end. And if you go down with your fists raised high, knowing that I'm fighting for the next generation and I do mean all power to the people.
Yeah. Hey, so that is Reverend Yearwood. Control, if we have that rolling of Reverend Yearwood, I forgot about that. I was too excited to just kind of jump in with the Rev. But brother, thank you for coming through.
Always.
For sure. That is Reverend Yearwood. You can find him on Twitter at Rev Yearwood. And I just want to show you a short video of him and some of his work, some of his journey. He's always in that good trouble. I did not know it was that much, but hey, he gives me a reference point. You know what I mean? Like that's some good trouble to be getting into. And we are no doubt at a critical juncture. You can just feel it. It's something's in the energy's off a little bit. And it feels like we're at that precipice where we've got to make a choice. We've got to make a move. We've got to make some decisions. So again, thank you for coming through.
Move your money, Chase, or we'll move ours.
Let me first say to the employees of this branch, we are here not as adversaries. That's very important. We stand here as humans together. We are brothers and sisters on this planet. I'm here because I'm originally from Louisiana. And 14 and a half years ago, almost 1,900 beautiful Americans, predominantly Black people, but Americans, drowned in the richest country in the world. And I would hope that post-Katrina, that we would be doing things better than what we did 15 years ago, that we would use that time to divest from fossil fuels and invest in clean energy. I would hope that that would be the business plan. The problem, though, is that the business plan right now for this bank, for Chase Bank, is that they are funding the fossil fuel industry. Over the past 3 years, they put $196 billion into the fossil fuel industry. Chase Bank, you have become rogue in your business plan, the same way that slavery and other institutions that are no longer have a social license, you are on that path. And that is why we are here. We're also here because the pipelines you are building are in the communities of Black and brown people. And so that can't be the situation. You're funding pipeline projects that's literally causing asthma or bronchitis or worse, cancer. We can't support that. The folks who are impacted by this are people who look like me, who are Black and brown people, who are suffering. I just want to keep it 100% real, that the money that comes out of this bank literally kills poor people in the same community they're operating in. There's too many reasons to stop this madness. This is not about Republican or Democrat or rich or poor. This is about humanity. Listen, there are other ways to make money. You can do better than this. You are funding projects that are killing our future. You are funding projects that are killing our existence. This is not only about equality, it's about existence. So we're here to bring you a message. If you continue to fund projects that are literally putting our existence on the line, and you have left us no choice, that we must put our bodies against the gears of the machine and bring it to a grinding halt. So again, for those who are working, I know on a Friday, I know this is probably the last thing you wanted to see, but get used to it, because we're gonna be there everywhere you are, as long as you continue to fund destruction. All we're asking is to let us live. Let us live. Stop the money pipeline. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Lila Wopila Tonka Ichichapalo, Lila Daya Hipalo, Ake Daya Yahipalo. Very good to see everybody. And I was paying attention to your chats, and you guys are right on. That was Reverend Yearwood. And if you had not heard about the Rev before tonight, please go to his Twitter, his Facebook, at Rev Yearwood on Twitter. And he's the president of the Hip Hop Caucus. And as you can see, he's also down with Stop the Money Pipeline. We definitely want to give airtime, support, blood, sweat, and tears, and tear gas, probably, to stop the money pipeline, because that's what we have been getting in this country. Those of us who stand up to that financial extractive war machine, that complex, that set of forces that keeps us divided and continues to think that it can run roughshod over Mother Earth and over we, the people. But it's because of people like Rev Yearwood that I feel better. I feel empowered. I feel encouraged. I feel like we have people in these fights that have our back. It's no fun facing prison time because you wanted to be a water protector, because you thought that your children don't deserve to inherit poisoned, cancerous water because somebody like Kelsey Warren or Enbridge said it should be so, because somebody like Kelsey Warren or Enbridge brought a fight to the death to your children's doorstep. That's the kind of decisions that are being made right now in Anishinaabe territory, treaty territory, at Line 3. You just saw very recently, I believe it was Red Lake Treaty Camp, the private police, I can't remember if it was the private military contractors or if it was state law enforcement, brought a couple of attack dogs to Line 3, to Red Lake Treaty Camp. And the Lakota People's Law Project was able to send a couple of allies, ambassadors, people that we support, and that is Muffie Musso and Felipa De Leon. We just call them Muffie and Felipa, and they are now in possession of a very controverted, storied, and running piece of history in a van, a passenger van that they're calling Manny. I think it's Manny, or it might be Benny. But that van has been to Minneapolis when the city was burning. It's had its windows shot out. It has also been to the Black Hills, Keystone, when President Trump came uninvited to our sacred lands, and the van had to be used in sort of a makeshift traffic deflector, and it got impounded. It's done its time. It's been released. It's been repaired. It's been breathed new life into, and now they have taken it to line 3. So I want to roll in a little video that features some of their experience there, and it's heavy. We do want to send encouragement and send people. You saw Oscar High Elk and Jacelyn Charger were also along for that visit, and they are all calling for personnel. They are calling for allies, anybody who is at that place in their hearts and in their minds where they can't stand for it anymore. Line 3 needs you and are calling for you. So if we could show that video, control, let's roll that in, please.
I'm going to, we're going into one of the camps right now, and we're going to meet them for the first time. My wife and I today are representing the, you can see our shirts are matching. So we are going to turn this camera around and walk in right now. So I just want to give everybody the experience.
Welcome, my name is Sasha Bolio. I'm from the Red Lake Nation. I'm Bear Clan. We're here holding down treaty space, 1863 Old Crossing Treaty. This is the first time we've taken a stand since 1863, since my grandfather, Chief Red Robe, signed the treaty. So I'm honored to be here. We're standing in a good way. We're holding them to our treaty space. Last week we were able to successfully shut them down with the Endangered Species Act. They were working over there with no tribal monitor. So Red Lake Nation just appointed me tribal monitor of the 1863 treaty territory.
Awesome,
yeah. So this is the Red Lake River right here. So I have full treaty rights, 1863 treaty rights. I have a ceded treaty assembly permit from the tribe that says that I have full protection from the tribe here. And tribal attorneys on speed dial, if a cop comes here, they already know, we got our protection, so they don't really mess with us. There's about 5 or 6 camps right now. We're the most northern camp. There's Red Lake Treaty Camp, White Earth Camp, Shell City, Palisades, and then Gnu Camp. So there's camps all the way up from the northern Minnesota all the way over to eastern Minnesota.
Oh, yesterday was another challenging day. We had, I think starting about 3:30, the cops and Enbridge workers started coming in and out of the lodge camp. Then one of the bigger confrontations happened after that, where they had deputies and sheriffs from a number of out-of-county areas came down. At that point, Tanya Abad was up and came down and talked with them and confronted them about what they were doing. There was at one point probably somewhere in the vicinity of 20 law enforcement. They threatened all of us with citation and or arrest. There were a number of us who just stood strong, and actually eventually they all backed off and left out of our area. In the process, they did arrest a couple of water protectors who'd come down from the top. They just got permission from, I think it was the DNR, to take 5 billion gallons of water out of the Mississippi, or out of the rivers in the middle of a drought. They had a permit for, I think it was 530 million, but then somehow just overnight it went to billion. They have 3 pumps down by the river. Those generators are the loudest. They also have generators going to keep the lights, I believe it is going. Then besides all of that, they have their equipment, drilling equipment, trucks. Before they put the big drill with the pipes going under the river, they have to have a small bore drill. And I believe that was going right underneath where I was sleeping, and you could feel the ground shake. It was really very freaky to be. So you have all these different things kind of going on at once. And that's what it's like to live at the lodge, which is where my camp is, and that's where I have been and will be. And it's an honor as a white ally to be helping to enforce the Native American Religious Freedom Act, as well as the 1855 treaty rights. And of course, I'm here for the water.
I was sighted at this very lodge on December 9th. I've been here residing at the Palisade Welcome Water Protector Center. I'm here to stand with Tanya Abed in full solidarity of her religious freedom to sit here and pray. And we're currently at the lodge, which stands between Enbridge and the river. So that's where we're at right now. We're at imminent threat of the lodge being taken by law enforcement, which are not recognizing the 1855 Treaty Authority cease and desist letter that was given for a no work order on this specific site.
I don't want this guy walking around like that. That's unnecessary.
Yeah, but you're on Anishinaabe territory.
I get
No, but you know we've been here before you. My lodge was even here before you came around. So don't even try to go there with me. Yeah, the religious freedom, we're finally able to practice it out in the open, but yet here you are desecrating my lodge, my medicine, my church!
And then they turn off their flashlights and walk around us. You know how unsafe and scary that would be? What if, I don't know if you have a daughter or a wife, but what if she was sleeping here trying to protect this beautiful land, and then she had creepy men who are unidentified. And when we ask them, can you identify yourself? They refuse to sometimes. And then some of your men don't even know that it's happening or claim that they don't know that there's men walking down here. So when there is miscommunication and misorganization within your own people, how does that make us safe? It doesn't. It doesn't, and you know that.
The cops have never kept America safe anywhere.
So those are so many lawsuits that we're about to put on you.
What job are you doing?
We are bringing national attention to this.
When it comes down to the sentence by any means necessary, you have to really think about that of how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to, set up a temporary barricade, or are you really willing to put your body on the line for the water and the land? And that's a very big sacrifice you have to think about, not only mentally, physically, but also spiritually, because in that moment when you're faced with a split-second decision where you gotta go or you're gonna stay, you have to be spiritually strong in your stance. Okay, I'm okay with this, and this is what I choose to do, and I'm understanding the consequences that come of this.
Great place to be. I don't want to leave, but I know we have other obligations, so definitely want to return. These are our relatives. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. How's my mic coming through? Control? Okay. That Muffie Felipa and Jacelyn Charger, who just accepted a plea deal and is on probation right now, as well as Oscar High Elk, who is still facing very serious charges in what is called Haken County in South Dakota. And we're very encouraged that he has Bruce Ellison as his attorney, as his representative. And we'll keep posted on Oscar and 2KC Media. We try to give him shout outs every time because, it's just not a good feeling to be facing charges based on these political reasons. But if we have Muffie and Felipa ready to join the stream, I'd like to kind of, hey guys, you could, just take a little bit of time to introduce yourselves and tell us how was line 3? Like, what was that experience like for you?
First of all, we'd like to say, Wopila Tunka Chase, you're doing a very good job, and we really appreciate all this opportunity that you have given the Native Indigenous population throughout Turtle Island. We just want to say big thank you very, very much, Chase, and all of the crew and the Lakota People's Law Project, the Last Real Indians. And I just want to say, Haomidakiapi, Chante Washte Napechiu Zapi from the Hesapa. And we are now live with where our group is called Uniting Resilience. We live in Rapid City, South Dakota. My name is Chanupa Maniwi. My English name is Monique Muffie Musso.
Hello, my name is Tahiki Lawi, and my English name is Felipa de Leon.
And we are hard at it with every cause that we can somehow we feel that obligation to participate, because we do have grandchildren. We have next generations, future generations coming, and this is important to unify at this time. And I just want to really, and me being ex-law enforcement, I am always going to start with this one phrase. And I want to say again, thank you to Chase, but I would like to say defund the police. And we're glad to be here and answer any questions you have.
So I just wanted to, I have not been able to make it to line 3 yet. And I feel kind of out of place going without being willing to pay the full price. There's a lot of trauma attached to the work that is happening at line 3, that happened at Standing Rock. People went to prison. People had to do time. People had to be forced into that corner where they're making those decisions about, am I willing to leave my family for a prison term, a prison sentence? And I don't think we showed the full extent on the video of what you all went through, but it was traumatic for me to see that again. And so I kind of wanted to ask you two, what are your thoughts on where we find ourselves as human beings facing these challenges, having to confront Goliath? It feels like David against Goliath, and they've got all the cops on their side. What was that experience like for you guys? Like, what did you take away from it?
I just want to start by saying that it was a travesty, the law enforcement that is now, and I seen it a little bit in Standing Rock, because we did participate in Standing Rock as well until we were threatened with our jobs. So I just want you to know they're doing those same tactics at even a different level. So when we arrived there, we immediately seen how they are very, very much wanting to show that all natives are drunk. They're drunkards. And, it was sickening to my heart to hear them say that. And I walked right up to all of them. And in their face, I advised them that I knew the federal law, and I was an ex-police officer, because I am. I was trained at the Federal Law Enforcement Agency in Artesia, New Mexico, and I was a law enforcement officer for the Oglala Sioux Tribe Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for approximately 9 years. And so seeing that and knowing what their tactics are, one of the police officers immediately told my wife, we have a gag order and we cannot talk. So it's a horrible situation that the police, they brought in people from all different counties, all different law enforcement counties. And that's wrong. That's wrong, because they did, I know in some states, some of the governors issued those bigger penalties on rioting. And they're calling us rioters. As soon as we walked in in a peaceful manner. There was no shouting, there was no nothing, and I immediately approached the guy that was walking around, and he advised that he was an inspector, an engineering inspector doing his job. No, he was not an engineer inspector. I myself have an engineering degree, and you don't go around just walking in circles. And he, one of the cops asked him, are you ready to go? And he said, no, I'm just going to continue walking around and walking around. And he motioned like this to that cop, and okay, the cop said, okay. So they had a plan. And we did not know at that moment that there was a couple of water protectors that were going to come down from the other side, to bring water to the camp where we just came out of for peace. And they threw him down to the ground and they took him. And then they put him in a car, and they immediately, there was an additional, when we got there on site, they had about 12 police officers right there with that one inspector. After they arrested the other gentleman, they all walked down, which totaled around 30 plus. And I hollered at their chief or whoever it was. I said, you know what? You need to stop. That you're bringing those guys down for what? And he said, well, when you guys start rioting, this is a riot right now, and we're asking you to stop rioting on us.
What?
And who's rioting? I know the law, and I can cite that law to you. And he said, well, you're rioting. And that is such the false, how that gray area that law enforcement uses that. And that's what we have experienced in the work that my wife and I do with the legislation and the law enforcement and the attorney generals. So we are very aware of the gray area that these law enforcement guys try to eloquently use wording to make it seem like they're doing their job, which is horrible, because I've seen it. And Chase, I just always am going to say defund the police, because that's a travesty. And if there's lawyers attached to fighting these pipelines, they looked at us like we were drunkard Indians. And one of the officers says, oh, look here comes some drunkard Indians again. Some more from a different tribe, because I'm carrying my flag. And so I looked at him, and Chase, and a lot of people know that my wife and I, we are alcohol and drug free. And we walk with prayer. We walk with our tobacco. We carry a major spiritual journey that we are on right now. And it's amazing that a law enforcement officer that's never seen us before, but we're walking in and we're brown skinned, and he refers to my wife and I as drunkards. And then the other officer that, might have known, I don't know his relationship with knowing Tanya, but he was saying, oh, we can arrest her. She's just a drunk around town. And that's wrong for a law enforcement officer, because I myself have gotten that training. You do not stand in judgment of anybody. As a law enforcement officer, you do not say what those officers were saying to us that day. And I let it be known. And I started citing the law to them, public law, federal law. And he immediately walked up and he started getting on his mic. He turned around those 20 plus officers that were coming. And then these guys stood down and they stopped talking. And so there's a situation there where when they're met with education or met with and I explained to them, I said, you know what? I know what it takes to be a police officer, because I was one. And I know you just have to have a high school diploma. So how many of you just have high school diplomas standing here? And, some of them started smirking, some of them, and they got uncomfortable with my questions. And I told them, I said, I'm not shouting. I'm talking to you. You guys were actually shouting at us. It totally changed the whole thing. So I just want you to know there was that moment there that they did close in on my wife and I, for a minute, thought that I was going to have to use my flagpole to take down at least 7 of them. Wow. It was just that at that moment, there was that decision you make.
It's
just want you to know it was
tough. it's tough to be put in that situation. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Muffie Musso and Felipa De Leon. You can find them at Uniting Resilience. I just want to take a moment to thank the people who are checking in, like Deb Parker. Thanks to all who are standing, she says. Degat Leyes, Linda Lee Bruner, everyone who's sharing the stream. I don't do enough promotion because it's just hard to do self-promotion. I forget to do it a lot of the time. But please share the stream. Every time you comment, every time you like, that stuff matters in the algorithm of social media. It helps the show just get traction. And if you're so inclined, if you want to listen to the long form interviews, this is Cut to the Chase number 20. We're 20 episodes deep, and it feels really, really good. It's like, how did this happen? But you know what? It's my honor. It's my privilege to even be here holding space with you all online. You might think like, hey, we're just logging in online, but no, we're sharing time and space together. Now, Felipa, I did want to come back to you about, I saw that you guys had the van. Now you got to clarify something. Is his name Manny or Benny? And what went down in Pine Ridge today?
The name is Manny. We named him Manny because he's all manual. I mean, to roll down the windows down.
Oh, yeah.
Unlock. Yeah, so we call him Manny. He runs he runs good.
You guys fixed him up nice. And I cannot believe it's the same van. I really can't.
He's on a journey.
Yeah, he's taking us on the journey. And in Pine Ridge, today was very exciting because it was the first Pride event that Pine Ridge had ever since that my wife went into the Attorney General's office to change the laws for protection. So we had the opportunity and we were invited to go and participate and to see all the youth coming in and enjoying themselves and being able to be who they are.
Yes.
It was really hard when we first pulled into Pine Ridge because that we passed that law 2 years ago in 2019, or my wife passed it in 2019. I give her all the credit. She did all the work, a lot of work to it.
It took a while, and we are not going to make light of the struggle that you all and everybody who's not conforming to the binary cultural rules that we learned without really learning them. They were just part of our culture. Every time we like joke about Wink Day or we try to make fun of somebody because of this or that, like we're doing a disservice. We are damaging our own families.
Yes.
And we have to be aware of that. This is very serious stuff that, you call it the work that you do, but really it's the life that you're living. And I wanted to say that I appreciate what you guys do. And I didn't know Pine Ridge I didn't know there was a Pride Parade on Pine Ridge. What the heck? How did that happen? Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
It was a heartfelt moment, everyone. We'd just like to say we are so proud and thankful for the Oglala Lakota Nation and their administration and the chairmans. The past chairman, Julian Bear Runner, played a big role. The Attorney General, Scott James, or the Oglala Lakota tribe's attorney at that time, Richard Zephyr, and I can't remember his name. Eckerfee,
Bob.
at the time, Robert Eckerfee, yes. They all came together and the Law and Order Committee, the Economic and Business Development Committee, all of the 9 districts. It was something that I did not think that we were going to be able to do what we did today in freedom to walk with everything we walked. And it overtook me. We have some videos that we will be posting to the unitingresilience.org, unitingresilience.com, and you can also view them on the Muffie Felipa Facebook page. Chase, I just want you to know I'm tough, but I did cry today because that was something that I lost my mom in December of 2019. She was very happy that me and Felipa were doing the work we were doing, and she kept telling us, now you guys can move home. You can move home, and we moved back closer because of my mom's health at the time back in 2016, and it was because of her that we came back. And had she not asked my wife and I to come home closer so she could visit us, I don't think this would have transpired, because at that moment there's a lot of people that became aware that we were back, because we have never been in the closet about our relationship. I was told as a law enforcement officer with the Pine Ridge Department of Public Safety at the time that I had to choose my career or be a faggot. So I chose to be a faggot, and I love who I love. And we left there in 2009, not ever thinking we were going to go back to our reservation. We went back for funerals and wakes, sad things. But today was an honor and was a moment that just took me. I mean, I completely cried, Chase, and I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I think, you know what? I watched that, and I watched some of it, and I would tell you that we have family members. Every family on Pine Ridge has somebody in their family unit, their Tiwahe, their extended family unit, their Tioshpaye, that is dealing with their ignorant relatives.
Right.
So when they are able to see people expressing themselves, not feeling like they've got to hide who they are, that empowers them. Now, we've come to the time, Muffie and Felipa, that I wanted to keep you for, but we will check back in with you again. So I just want to thank you for popping in on very short notice. I really do appreciate that.
One thing we were going to let you know is June is Pride Month. At the end of June, we plan on going up for at least staying a couple weeks up in Red Lake in our Palisades. We're going to go fight the fight. So just put that out there right now that we're going to be going strong from here.
You know what? Line 3 has called out. All the organizers have called out for people, personnel, whoever can come, please do. Again, we will speak very soon. Thank you again, Muffie and Felipa.
Thank you, Chase. You're awesome.
You're awesome, Chase.
We'll check back in again. So there you have that. I was very delighted to have Muffie Musso and Felipa De Leon. Again, find them at unitingresilience.com. They are organizing from the Black Hills of South Dakota, and they are they're relatives of our family and longtime allies. And I'm encouraged to see how their work is evolving, because what they've gone through has carried us and has given us a different understanding in Lakota country. And I know that in Indigenous country, these binary assigned gender, dual gender roles and assignments, that is foreign to us. That sort of otherizing did not exist before we learned to do that to each other. So it's important, even like that is not their work. That is just the life that they have to struggle through that. So I wanted to talk to them about Line 3. They were able to do that. I just saw today that they were doing that in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. So thank you, Muffie and Felipa. I do want to speak on the reason why I came to DC, and we brought our squad out here. There is some people who make the things happen behind the scenes. Guys like Chris, DJ Fizz Sherrick, guys like Chuck Banner of formerly of Earthstream Media, who's been filming in Indigenous country for probably almost as long as I've been alive. And we've got another brother named Rory and another brother named Andrew from the Leonard Peltier podcast. Please look them up. They've got new episodes dropping probably weekly, bi-weekly when they get them. But when they get them, they are hard-hitting. And I want to thank them for the work they do. They are the official team that is authorized by Leonard Peltier to create works for this generation. And so we are delighted, encouraged, and honored to work with them in this sphere, because this is a place that a lot of people have forgotten. Just like Rev Yearwood was saying, you know, we're standing on Leonard's shoulders right now. Every indigenous nonprofit, everyone in any tribal nation that enjoys, I don't know, worshiping in the ways of our forefathers and foremothers without being arrested. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed in 1978. So was the Indian Child Welfare Act. All of that progress, that forward movement that happened in the 70s, did not come without our bloodshed and without our people being placed in instances in captivity for political reasons. So they are considered political prisoners by groups like Amnesty International, by Amnesty Denmark, by Desmond Tutu, by Nancy Pelosi, by the Dalai Lama, by Representative Raul Grahova, by Madam Secretary Deb Haaland. They've all called for Leonard Peltier's clemency. President Biden needs to hear all of us right now loud and clear that 45 years is too long. When the agencies that are under his command right now have committed crimes to put Leonard Peltier in prison. The FBI and the DOJ have committed crimes to put Leonard Peltier in prison. You can verify this. They have engaged in criminal coercion of minor witnesses who later recanted and said, hey, they threatened us. They concocted falsified affidavits, multiple falsified affidavits from a woman named Myrtle Pourbear, who Leonard Peltier had never met. They threatened to take her kids. They engaged in criminal coercion. They illegally extradited Leonard Peltier from Canada. Not only that, but they claimed that Leonard Peltier had a Mini 14, or not a Mini, a 223. They tied that gun to Leonard Peltier, and then they found 223 bullets on the Jumping Bull compound at the site of the event. They did ballistic testings on that ammunition and on that gun, and they found that Leonard Peltier's gun did not fire those bullets, but they withheld that evidence, that exculpatory evidence, from the court. They have engaged in criminal conduct upon criminal conduct, and Leonard Peltier is still doing our time. So it's part of my duty, my spiritual duty, to call for the truth, to demand Leonard Peltier's clemency. Please find the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, Freedom Ride 2021, and the Leonard Peltier podcast. We are all in. We are supporting his clemency, bar nothing. There is a narrative out there that completely ignores the struggle that we've been through, that ignores the massacre that COINTELPRO instigated on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And we cannot hide from that. We cannot act like it didn't happen. We can't act like Leonard Peltier has just disappeared. He is a grandfather. He is a father. He is a sun dancer. And he is alive, and his spirit is unconquered. He is still calling for his freedom. He communicates to the world, to you, through all of his networks. He expressed his condolences when we lost Leonard Crowdog, and he'll no doubt hear about what happened in Washington, D.C. today, tomorrow, and on the 46th anniversary of the Jumping Bull shootout. So I wanted to just say a few words on what brought us to Washington, D.C. If we could, we would like to speak with Deb Haaland, but we also want to thank her. There is nobody who has a tougher job right now as far as Indigenous country is concerned. She has called for Leonard's clemency when she was in the United States Congress. This was before her historic appointment to be the first ever Indigenous female secretary, cabinet level secretary in the United States presidency, in the president's administration. Now, she, on the heels of Kamloops 215, if you recall, that was 215 young children who were found in a mass grave. And then more started to pop up, and more. And those of us in Indigenous country knew, we're well aware of that trauma because we grew up in the broken homes. We grew up in the homes that the church broke. We grew up in those homes where kinship was destroyed, and those values, those worldviews, those support systems were completely erased, eviscerated from our family unit. So we know there's mass graves. And we also know that Deb Haaland, as an Indigenous woman, is right when she says that this process in creating the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, this truth-finding process is going to be long and painful. She herself said that her grandparents were also stolen from their families as children. Every Indigenous person is 1, 2, 3 generations removed from this very horrific, genocidal, holocaustic trauma. Everybody in the comment sections is saying 751 young babies, children were found at Kawes First Nations. So that it is going to be something that we've not dealt with. We are now unearthing the evidence of America and Canada's genocide. Up to this point, these colonial legacies were only felt by us. Like I said, those who are still different levels of recognizing, healing from, and dealing with that trauma. It's not something that's in academia. It's not something that I can just remove myself from and then become a subject or study our own people or my own family and think that I can remove myself from that. That is not possible. What has happened is going to come to light. That is a lot of children. Those are a lot of mass graves. And the official statement coming from the Kawes First Nation is asking for space, asking for privacy, because these are real grieving descendants. These are real grandmothers, people who didn't get a chance to be mothers and grandmothers and know the sanctity and power of a family. These are people who were kidnapped as babies, molested, sexually violated in unimaginable ways by priests and nuns. And that guts us to the core. Now, as a collective, we can confront, we can navigate this unimaginable, unconscionable situation that we find ourselves in, and we wholly reject that false apology that Pope Francis gave, that was a non-apology, that is not going to cut it. I love the Pope. I love the Pontifex. I see the value in that. But the Pope, other organized religions need to sit and listen to indigenous people. Listen to the original civilizers of this globe and see what our worldview has to offer. A worldview that we have consistently offered to you in the last 500 years. Ever since contact, we entered treaties. We adopted the foreigner as our younger sibling, as our younger brother, as our younger sister sovereign. And we have paid unimaginably. 100 million indigenous peoples have perished in the Holocaust and in the genocide of the Americas. And I want to send our voice and our encouragement to those who cannot put words around the trauma that you are going through right now. All of our generation, my mother's generation, everybody who was involved and who was victimized by government-sponsored, church-executed abductions of our people. We have to tell the truth. That is the only way we are going to heal. So I want to commend Secretary Deb Haaland for creating the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it is going to lead to truth and healing. And that is necessary for our people, for indigenous peoples, but also for us to begin to engage and move toward forgiveness, move toward a healing. The only way I can think of this is letting a wound scar over, if that's possible. What is it to ask somebody who went through that to heal, to forgive? It's impossible. You have to give them space and give them time, just like Kawis S is asking of us right now. So I want to thank you all for paying attention, for sharing those very traumatic instances. It does us no good to hide from them, to say that is bad news. That is we don't want to address that right now. It's not the time. There is never going to be a right time to address things of this magnitude. So I want to thank you for confronting these very heavy materials in a truthful way, and letting that process do what it's going to do, because that's how we can continue to move forward and create the kind of reality that we want for our children. I wanted to say about that much for tonight. That is always a heavy, heavy subject. There's just no getting away from it. So I want to thank you all for hanging in there. Thank you for sharing our stream. Thank you for subscribing to our podcast. Please go and subscribe to our podcast, because if you can't catch this live, you can get compartmentalized full versions of all of our interviews. And we have had amazing people bless the microphone with us, and to be able to share, or maybe transcend, as someone in the comments said, transcend time and space and light each other on fire. So I want to thank you all for sharing that bit of energy, that bit of kinesis together. And every Wednesday, and actually next Wednesday, we might do a Thursday show. And we also have tomorrow night, we're just going to concentrate on Leonard Peltier solely. So be prepared for that. Mark on your calendar for tomorrow, Friday, June 25th. That's the, what is that? That's the 146th. Anyway, it's the anniversary of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Greasy Grass. So yeah, I believe it's 145 years since Custer got sued. But I want to thank you all for being all up in the comment section. Thank you for tuning in. In the comments, you can find a link to the podcast. Click that link, click subscribe. And if you want to buy us a mate, a yerba mate, for the price of a yerba mate, you can sponsor our podcast, which would be amazing because, as you can see, we're on the road. We're doing more things. We're creating a little bit of room. And we always intend to bring you the truth, to tell it like it is, to cover the things that mainstream does not want to cover. For whatever reason, they do not want the truth getting to us. And we commit ourselves to bringing that to you. And we've got to also thank the Lakota People's Law Project, the Romero Institute. Those are the flagship sponsors. Without their support, we couldn't do this. I want to thank the Leonard Peltier podcast. They are on location. We are on location with them, trying to get Leonard out of jail, get him out of prison, political imprisonment. I want to thank Last Real Indians. Thank you guys for holding it down. Thank you for allowing the platform. I'm looking forward to moving that platform to where it needs to be. And we're just blessed to be able to be in this space and to be able to communicate with you. So Lila Wopila Tanka Chichapilo, this is Cut to the Chase number 20. I'll see you tomorrow. But for now, we are out.